So yeah, I want to really talk about the day after tomorrow in education, but in part. So we can't tackle the whole aspect of the education system, but some of the ideas and some of the research which I've been exploring kind of sort of over the last 5 years, and also from my own personal experience built on my education. Fortunately, I wasn't educated in the Victorian era. I don't think anyone else was here, which is good, because it was very much built around this hierarchy. It was built around discipline. There was this real element of authority and this fear, which I do believe has continued to remain within the culture of education, and we're trying to kind of sort of overcome that. But unfortunately, I never had to wear a dunce hat. The only time that I experienced that was when I had the opportunity to go, when I was at primary school, to a reenactment of a Victorian school, which I thought was very interesting. I thought that, thank God that I wasn't educated in that way. Thank God that I had the ability to actually kind of sort of think in a different way and to challenge kind of sort of ideas. One of the things which I suppose, looking at what Jeremy said, I really do like Ken, and I find that he's very inspiring. The bit which I found really interesting was his humour, but his real empathy to the way that kind of sort of people think. I do get what you're saying, Jeremy, in the sense of he is a bit of a comedian, but his actual kind of sort of information, the knowledge which he's trying to kind of sort of get across, was really important about breaking rules and about how to encourage people to kind of sort of make mistakes and how to encourage people to develop their own ideas and that kind of sort of self-reflection. And alongside kind of sort of people like Ken Robinson, there's people like Tim Ferriss, who really does kind of sort of challenge the system. He's written a book all about working the 4-hour week, which everyone goes, what, the 4-hour week? So there's a lot of people now thinking about the psychology of the way that we kind of sort of interact, the way that we kind of sort of work. And the big thing which I think is really important, which is missing within the education sector, is the way that we should try and innovate, the way that we can actually make mistakes and that we can improve on those. The big thing which I've learned from running my own business is success is built on failure, which I know sounds quite pessimistic, but it's so important to improve. When I made my first video, I wouldn't go and show that to a client now. I actually look back at it and go, God, thank God I've improved. Thank God I've learned from those mistakes and I've developed. One of the things which I think is kind of sort of really important is the fact that so often within the education system that we are trying to kind of sort of cram information, and often we're learning in the wrong environment. I don't know if anyone kind of sort of remembers, I know there's a few students in the room, but where you then have to be in that kind of sort of real high pressure, high stress, working late at night, trying to cram as much information into your head to regurgitate it the next day in an exam. And so often I'd walk out going, what did I write? And I think that that's often kind of sort of the wrong way, the wrong kind of sort of approach. Don't get me wrong, I think there needs to be that rigour and needs to be that way of learning, but I think we need to kind of sort of encourage new ways of kind of sort of learning, new ways of retaining kind of sort of information. And one of the things which I think is kind of sort of really important to that is gaining experience. So you only learn that the pan is hot from touching it. I remember my mum telling me, don't touch the pan, and then I got burnt. And then you then learn from your own experience. And I think that that experience is the way that you can encourage and learn knowledge. So often that we're trying to pass on data, and often that data is then turned into information. But only through experience is then when we actually get knowledge. And it's a really kind of sort of interesting way to encourage that kind of sort of experiential learning, the way that we can think and the way that we can apply that information to then a situation and we then learn from it. A bit which I do find quite interesting, and always through kind of sort of my education and in my career now and working with different people, is a measure of success is consumerism, is how big, how fast your car is, who's got a big TV. But surely, one of the things which I do believe, and one of the things which I've changed and I suppose challenging in my own career, and recently kind of sort of looking at how I can make my career more fun, is to really look at how we can actually measure success in the amount of fun which we have, the amount of enjoyment which we get out of life. We're constantly hearing about the GVA, of how much money we're then going to make, how much money we can put back into the economy to keep, society going. But surely, is that 5 minutes? Brilliant, thank you. But if we're then looking more at the GVH, the gross value of happiness, then surely that must be more of a way that so often we need to kind of sort of change the way that we're thinking. And that can overcome some of the mental health issues, some of the stresses and the constraints that we have to conform to within the Western world. A big thing for myself, and I really enjoy gardening. I know that sounds quite sort of geeky, but at that age now where I'm proud to be a gardener. But one of the things which I really like with gardening is it is an element of risk. You plant a seed, you don't know if it's going to germinate, let alone if you know that it's actually you're going to be able to reap the rewards and eat the fruits of your labour. But when you do grow, and these were some of the seedlings which I grew, as you can see, a real mishmash of different plants. But I love the idea of then you can then nurture those. And this really kind of sort of relates to the way that I look at with experimental learning, with the apprenticeship model, of actually getting people into the workplace and gaining experience and learning from their mistakes and encouraging that. And I think that that's one of the things that within education we can try and find new ways and new approaches to, rather than just be looking at the textbook, regurgitating information in the exam process, actually then nurturing those ideas and allowing people to then grow. Through my work, and about 6 years ago, we then started working with the council and we set a number of live briefs, which was great. It was an opportunity for young creatives to come up with advertisement for recycling, which is a global problem, so it's brilliant for them. It was great for the council because we gave a fresh approach. We came up with new ideas, we married the two together. But that experience led on to give those students the confidence to say, I've done something, I've achieved something, rather than just doing an exam and great, they finished it, and then moving on to the next form of academia. The big thing which I see as the opportunity now is really around how we have got technology and we've got all these amazing tools. We're constantly kind of sort of living on our phones. And how can we really kind of sort of harness that technology, and how can we use those tools to change the way that we do educate? That we don't have to sit in a lecture hall like this and just listen to someone present. How can we actually have a bit more flexible learning? How can we connect with people when they are travelling? How can we then look at some of the more social ways of using technology and applying that to our careers and to education? A big part of that is gamification. And the ability of the way that people can interact with kind of sort of the education which they're doing. They can look at the ways that they actually want to learn. They want to explore what it is. They're not reading the textbook and having to then write a paper on it and put in their kind of sort of angle. They can actually think through the ideas, and they can also learn the wrong way. And that's the important bit, and I think that's one of the things which we can learn a lot from the games industry, about how we can encourage to engage people so they want to learn. Now, with mobile devices, we need to be connecting to people in a different way. One of the things which I find is so often, when running a magazine, I used to hand it over to a group of young people. Do you want to read the magazine? They'd look at it, flick through, drop it, and straight back on their phone. One thing which I was amazed was when I was telling off one of the students which I was working with, and they still managed to write a text while looking at me in the eye. And I was like, wow, how do you do that? How can we harness that kind of sort of creativity, that intelligence? Video is my passion. Video is what I do, and that's some of the kind of ideas and the areas which I really feel that I can kind of, sort of bring into the education industry and learn from, and see how we can then use kind of sort of the idea of promotional videos, the way that we're surrounded by videos. Has anyone watched a video on YouTube today? Has anyone seen a video on Facebook? Well, we're forced to now. So it's all those ways of kind of sort of how we can then start using videos as a way to change the textbook, how we can then make more engaging kind of sort of learning materials. You've then got, for me, having to adopt, and I can see the majority of people in the room are having to adopt technologies. And that's a difficult thing, that's a challenging kind of sort of area. But if we need to really be thinking about education, we need to think about the Generation Z, where those people are, where our next generation, the babies of today, how they're going to be interacting with content. Are they going to want to read textbooks? Are they going to want to come to lectures? Are they going to have to sit through a timetable? And that's where we'll be in a position where we really need to start thinking differently and encouraging people, our students, and people like myself, where I feel very fortunate where I've been encouraged, to start thinking differently. One of the things which I really did love when I was at art college, which at the time, I absolutely hated Mr. Rhodes for doing it, but he was such a mentor to me, my art teacher. He came along and he just painted over my painting. He said, "It's all wrong." And I was like, "What?" And I started crying, I'm not going to lie. I kicked off. I was like, "What have you done to my piece? I worked so hard on that." And he said, "Well, look, you need to look at how you can improve on it, how you can challenge that." And yeah, we argued that night. But 2 weeks later, I looked back at the piece and how it had improved. And then I had to then eat humble pie and say, "Well, thank you for improving." Not only did it allow me to think about how to challenge the system, how to then think differently, it also gave me a set of balls where I could then kind of sort of argue with my teacher. One of the big things which getting into the education kind of sector about 5 years ago, looking at the way that we can use technology, so often people are going, "Well, we're doing it. We're creating these virtual learning environments." But a lot of the virtual learning environments which I look at are not evolving at the same pace as technology. If we look at Facebook, if we look at Twitter, the way that those technologies have really kind of sort of harnessed our imaginations, they've connected us, we spend so much time being absorbed by them. But why are then some of these virtual learning environments not engaging people? When I was at university, I used Blackboard, which is a virtual learning environment. Now teaching and lecturing, we're still using Blackboard, but I see the same problems. The students aren't going on to look at the slides which I've uploaded, and they're not wanting to connect with that way of learning. So surely one of the ideas which I'd like to kind of sort of question and put out for discussion is how we can encourage people to start harnessing technology and start thinking about the future. And then from there, surely that those people, those ideas, the way that they are using technology can be that new dawn, can be that new approach, can be the way that we need to kind of start innovating education and encouraging those people to innovate education with us. Having that peer-to-peer mentoring, that leadership, having young students who come up with ideas. I know the society who organised this, those are great leaders. If you look at how many seats are empty, where this should be full up with students, we should encourage that within the next generation, but people are then scared to do it. I feel fortunate that from working for myself and challenging the system and being entrepreneurial, I have been in a position where I have then taken some nice holidays throughout my career and had then that time to break away, to reflect, to explore, but more importantly, to problem solve while then travelling. And that was really important, to take some of those ideas and come back and think, right, we can do things differently. We don't have to just think of the traditional ways that education was, where potentially we could then be dunces, where we're constantly worried about then that failure. We're worried about expressing our ideas in a way that we can then learn, and surely that should then be celebrated. One of the things which I really like with Leicester and living here for the last 15 years, and now this is my home, is the fact that we've now got this sense of pride. Richard III, amazing. Do you know what I mean? It's really then connected people. Obviously Leicester City, that's connected people even more so. And I think that we need to encourage that sense of pride within people and really then get people to be thinking about what their futures are. Not just when they graduate, so they want to educate themselves for the rest of their lives. That they constantly want to be learning, they constantly want to be thinking and exploring kind of sort of new ideas. But I suppose that's the end of my talk. I hope that that's kind of sort of generated a few ideas, and let's look at how we can really use technology to think about the future and how we can then innovate education. Thank you very much.